Michael?
Bro,
Doing?
watching the Giants game.
Yeah, there you go.
Yep.
I'm sitting here eating, so.
Trying to see
Yeah.
Giants.
How's California down there? Is it starting to cool down?
No, it's amazing every day.
Yeah, it's hot here now, right now.
It's hot here too. It's still warm.
Yeah. I'm gonna set the phone down here and try and eat.
Me too.
Hunting season starts this Saturday and it is dry out, but I like it raining. Got this stupid cat the other day, but the thing follows you everywhere.
You found it?
No, ended up getting it from somebody. The thing follows you everywhere, though. It's kind of funny. Starting to get along slowly.
Whitney is here.
What's that?
So Whitney's here.
Oh,
I'm here. Yes.
how you doing, Whitney?
Doing well, Jason. How are you?
Doing real good.
Good. Good, good. Is it just the three of us this week? Maybe. Oh, no, it's only 9:02.
Yeah, it's just now. We'll get there.
Oh, there we go. More people.
Doing time to eat.
I don't feel so bad. Well, I'll mute myself so you don't hear me eating. Remember how to do it.
Portia, what's up?
Hello, how are you?
Excellent. Me and Jason are just having dinner. Welcome. Anybody get to watch the message? It was on. If you tried to watch it in the app, it was kind of messed up for a while. I think it still is actually. On the YouTube anyway. It's like playing some weird music over the top of him talking. You can't hear him, but it's only if you go on the app on your phone. You want to go listen to it? Go on the computer. I know Lauren and Lori not coming. I think Amber should be here. Let's see. So what's anybody's favorite book they've ever read that changed their life? Anybody have one besides the Bible? They like had a really big impact on their life. There she is. There she is.
Oops, sorry. Hello.
How you doing?
Good. Sorry.
I was just asking everybody if there's any books that anybody's read in their lifetime that changed their life besides the Bible.
The Alchemist.
And change your life because it was written well or because learn something that you just didn't know or blew your mind or change your life in a way that you changed part of your life or what?
I mean, it's a super short book, The Alchemist. And after I read it, I bought like 12 copies and sent them to everyone I loved for that Christmas or whatever it was. And it was because it, in a very short, simplistic way, it was a story about a man who was always exactly where he needed to be the entire time. I mean, it was what we talked about like last weekend, the remembrance way of like remembering what you already know on a soul level or something, like just mind blowing, how simple it all really is,
That's pretty good.
that for me, that was one. There was a couple. Anatomy of the Spirit, that was a really good one.
Pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, any of the books that I read that changed my life were like somehow it's like you're reading it going, yeah, to everything you're reading. Like you couldn't have articulated it before the moment, but you have a full knowing and understanding of exactly what they're saying. And it just kind of oversimplifies what you've kind of always known, but puts it into words for you in the best possible way, I guess. I don't know, or makes you feel not alone.
No, it makes sense.
What did other people say?
No, we just
Yeah.
just asked it.
Oh.
We say anything. That was the first one. Be a romance novel. Anybody like romance novels? Fiction, nonfiction.
Jason does.
Trade books. It really doesn't matter. I mean, what I'm getting at is, obviously, what I'm getting at about asking that is what Chad was getting at in the message, but I'm just gonna go based off what I see that, and again, I'll share this again. I haven't been through the whole Bible, so I don't know if that's my full opinion of it, or might be different than others, but I will say that for me, reading some through it, it's more about a reference for all of us to make sure you can check in and understand that you're not going through what you're going through alone. And it's not just about God having that relationship that we always talk about, but it's about there's a book of stories about people that were witnessed in their greatest and worst moments of their life. And to me, it's like it's less of a religious book to me than it is a constant reminder that forever, from the beginning until long after we're gone, it'll be the same as far as somebody has already gone through what you're going through. High or low, somebody's already done it. You're not isolated in the feeling. You're not you haven't been through the hardest thing ever, and you also haven't accomplished the best thing ever. Right? Like there's both sides of that. It's not just a reference of like the poor and the weary and the needy. It's also about epic conquers and epic success stories too, that can also give you some relativity and make you humble a little bit to realize that you're not what we always say, you're not God, you're not winning, you have control of your life. You're not truly that important when it comes to like the success things, like the stories you're telling other people about you or your resume or whatever it is you share with other people to start off impressing them to be part of your life. Those things for me are the tricks that we get into. We fall into the traps and the tricks of, hey, how are you? Who are you? And then you go down the road of like laying out your resume, essentially, because that's what we've been kind of trained to do. To get a job, you give a resume. To create a friendship, you lay out some kind of coolness about you that somebody else will like. To be in a relationship, you start to falsify some things sometimes in the beginning so that they will like you because you have this fear of being rejected. I think the more personal the situation, the more we dig into falsities, I think, or not even lies, just like false images of what you think you are or should be. So yeah, the Bible to me is, I think it's the same, right? It's always there. It's the same. It's gonna read it. If you read it from front to back, it's the same story. He's not gonna go read it again and the author is he has a volume 2 that's gonna change. It's the same. And it's the same and because it's proving one point. That story is also you. About John or about Peter is also Portia, about Jason or Amber. The names will constantly change. The stories are the same. That's why it's a good reference to know that, you've never been through something alone. You just truly haven't. And I think we get tied up in that thought that, especially when it comes to bad, I think it's easier to sulk in the bad and say, oh, nobody understands the woes of me. Nobody understands what I've gone through or what I'm going through, or this hurt. And totally get that. I mean, I think that's normal. But to reference and have a constant reminder that not just his son walked it and talked it and proved to you, but truly everybody through stories, through scripture. I mean, there's tons of different stories that are just like, wow. Like, wow, what moments of sheer like complete rock bottom we talk about, or like how can so many people sinned so deeply and then saw the light or come out of it or been helped out of it or changed for the worse or seem like they shouldn't have had a chance to be the best. That's a good one. I was like reading stories about, we initially think, well, that person is too far gone, or the devil has them, or how could they be like that Judah? How could they be that evil? And I think the better stories are the ones that's like, you always have a chance to have redemption. Always. Like, I believe in all cases. I mean, we could have a talk about that probably on our off week sometime. Like, what is the line that we cross for not giving someone redemption? But I would think if you read, and I have not, if you read through all these stories, you can really see and understand the ones I've read, and I hear a lot of times are quite that, or like a lesson being learned in a moment. I think that's why they're so important to be recorded into a book and passed along so that we constantly can look at it and say, yeah, you know what? Maybe I'm feeling bad about myself. Maybe I feel like the things I've done to this point don't deserve me of anything great in this world. That I don't deserve great love. I don't deserve a good job or people to care about me, or I don't deserve this or that because I have this deep guilt about what I've done in this world. But I think what the book will tell you is that that's complete nonsense. It truly is. I mean, you can, when we talk about, like on our off weeks, we talk about fail, like fail forward or fall down, get up. It's like, how do you know what's great if you don't know what's the worst? There's a lot of that in there. And that's why it intrigues me. It's like, I think I used to really look at it just as a religion. I think that's what turned me off about probably getting into my faith, because I looked at more of it like as a religion and as a way to sell it. But if you read it truthfully, with open mind, it's a book of stories about humans going through amazing things. Inspiration on both ends of success and failure. And it's like, that's what, to me, I think that's what that is, a constant reminder, reference to know that, oh yeah, how many millions of people have gone through this before me? I'm not by myself. This isn't rare. I'm not weird, or I'm not unaccepted, or I'm not unnormal. I'm not normal. I'm not any of those things that we start to go through as a list in our heads of things that we start to self-sabotage ourselves. We can get away from that if we can reference something. It's just like journaling to me too. Like when you journal, or we talked about one time, I told you we did this thing in when I was in the sports world still, we had people write letters and we did them too. And then open them, mail them to them 5 years later, or a year later, whatever it is. And you get it, open it, and you don't recognize it because that's not you anymore. Or you're like, who was that? Because there's moments of us that we can be asked tough questions and it wouldn't be recognizable to our own self. You know, that's a story, that's a narrative. You ever thought, I've thought this because this is what I do, but I think crazy thoughts about like, what if like we all had to write a book about our whole life? You know, Amber just went through this and it took her a long time to do because when is your whole life? I mean, she's still living, right? She's still here. She's still doing life. So how do you write a life story when you still have a lot of life left, or, you know, halfway there? And but I think what if it wasn't an option, it was a task? Truthfully, what would your story look like? Would it be like the Bible? You tell a bunch of stories about people around you? Because that's what it essentially that was like to me. Like reading the Bible is a bunch of stories and there are people. And some cool things that happen, and some tragedies that happen, and some greatnesses that came out of it. It's just a book written of stories for you to reference and go, hey, same. You know, same here. Me too. You know, I can validate your feelings because I've been through that too. And because you had the energy to say out loud. So man, for me, and I want everybody else to speak on it too, because I think it's important. I mean, I think this particular thing is very individualized to each one, because everybody's relationship with God is very unique and different. But what the Bible means to you, and I think it's probably the same. I think it's very unique to a lot of people. I don't think it's always the same thing to everybody else. For me, it's a reference guide to make sure that I don't get too much of my feelings about like, you know, I'm going through this. You know, when I'm go to church on Sunday and I hear them recite some scripture and I hear a message, I'm like, there's a reason why it feels powerful. So it's like, oh, wow. Like don't feel alone in the thought, you know what I mean? If I'm going through something and I hear something in a service and I'm like, wow, okay, I feel a little bit dumb. It's like when I told you guys I like to stand next to the ocean because it's so big and I feel little. That's the same idea when I hear, oh yeah, well, you know, okay, now I feel good. I feel better. It like almost allows me to go through life without guilt of choice of how I want to choose to live my life. And also that it's okay that I will fail a bunch of times, not just with the rest of my life, but maybe tomorrow or with this idea. That's a big one for me. There's certain things I've talked about several times in my own head that I've tried to be like, okay, we're done with that. We're going to stop doing this pattern. We're going to change this, or this is done for our life. And I've tried to talk myself out of or want to change, but then I'll find myself continuing a pattern. But these help me with like understanding that sometimes it just takes time to do things, or sometimes it's okay to continue to fail in something because you are aware of it. You're trying to work through it to win. So it's really a reference to me. It's like a cheat sheet, quick guide. What's those Cliff Note books in high school? If you didn't pay attention in class all year, you grab that yellow book and make sure you pass the test. It's not quite like that. I'm just saying, it is a reference for me to make sure that if I'm feeling like a failure in something or an idea, that one, there's no such thing. And then two, that I don't get too far ahead of myself with like, getting to the point of what could easily turn into a God complex. Yeah, I've been a lot of those people. I was getting really close to it. I felt like when I was in Scottsdale in the end, I feel like I was getting really too close to that line. That I had full control and that, nobody can do anything and me. So I think it helps in both ways, but yeah, anybody want to talk on it? I mean, Amber, I think what's interesting to do, and I think it's hard, just like we do with these studies in school, we did them a lot in sport. We've talked about this so many times on here, like, hey, everybody write down the 5 best qualities about you. Okay, go. Like, how much time do you need? And like, some people freeze up and they don't write anything down. Some people can bang through it. Some people can bang through it and put down 5 things that they believe they should be, but they don't believe in their heart. So I feel like when we're in those terms, like what an exercise would be. You want to touch any on Amber? I mean, we're talking about, obviously the Bible here, but as far as it relates to a book of stories, I mean, I know you were the author of your book, and the Bible is a little bit different. It was stories written by the people of witness, but
the same. I mean, one, as a child, even though I have no idea if Dad, planted the seed in me that was the skepticism of Christianity, or if that was something I was born with, in going to church all those years. But I always had high-mindedness with not being a brag, but just like it actually was for me, it was like a double-edged sword in life, because understanding is actually, creates more problems, right? the more you kind of understand, the harder life is. Other than, like when you're kind of a simpleton and it's just given you and you're just enjoying the story, the multicolor coat, and that sounds beautiful. But when you have an understanding for things, even as a child, like I understood. Stop it. My dog is very upset with this conversation for some reason. I don't know why. But even as a kid, I could like hear the metaphors. Like I didn't care really as much about each individual story specifically as I could about, I heard the metaphor. I heard what they were trying to sell us when they were, telling a certain story about something, that there was an underlying story there. And so that did help me in life later. And even when I was writing my stories, I did, like you said, I mean, yeah, it certainly wasn't the Bible, but I was just writing a story about the life that I was witnessing as I saw it, and keeping mindful as I was writing it that there was a lot of emotion attached to it, not only for me, but the other people in my life. And that somehow, some way, if by sacrificing myself or telling those stories, other people could feel not alone or not weird or not bad or sinful or whatever, and that there was still some kind of road to redemption, or if I could show them some kind of a map. And I was also very aware and clear on, just because I touched the fire and I'm telling you it burned me, you may still go down this road. I wasn't trying to, finally at that point I was at a stripping of my own ego, where at least I could say, this is how you should live life. That's not how I was approaching it. I really wanted to stay as humble as I possibly could throughout it. And even I sent you guys in the group thing for the link tonight. Somebody had just mentioned to me a story about in the Bible, and I had to look it up because I didn't know where it was from. I think it was 9:7, but I sent it to you guys. It was about a woman who the whole town found out that she was an adulteress. And, that was a major sin in those particular days and things. And so the village was going to stone her to death. And Jesus, come over here and look at this whore, and everybody was judging her and this and that. And, they all expected because he was supposed to be the son of God or, a prophet or a leader of good, that he would somehow be the first to condemn her so that they could all say, we're justified in our judgment towards this person, this whore. And he said, well, let the first person here without sin cast the first stone.
Yeah.
And man, that just always is a grounder for me.
That's a big one.
Because there is no one without sin.
That's a big one.
And when we know that, then we can say, gosh, what would it be like to be her? Or have I done anything like that? Or my God, what if everyone stoned me for the secrets I keep? Or, right? I mean, the equalizer. I don't know if that was a tangent, but that's what was coming out for me.
I think that's an amazing point. I just read it too.
Well, here's a good story, Michael. Went to church Sunday and
hey, hold on, Jason. Can Mike comment on what I said?
Okay,
No,
I'm
no,
kidding.
no,
I thought you were done.
I got nothing to say. Go.
I'm kidding. Hi,
Oh, I
buddy.
know. I know it. But I better say it before I forget it, I guess.
Yeah.
But anyway, went to church Sunday and my aunt was in town and she lives about 5 hours away. And so my dad was at church and she was at church, and somehow the preacher was talking about some Bible stuff and whatever. And the sermon was really touching my aunt, and she goes, man, I ain't had a Bible in years. Somehow it got lost in the move or something. I said, well, you know what? It would be her parents. I said, my grandma and grandpa gave me this Bible and I was about 14. Well, I was 11, I guess, looking at the date, and it has a whole bunch of stuff just outlined in it. I haven't looked at it in years because I have another Bible. And so I looked at her in church. I said, I got something for you. She goes, what? I said, I'll give you my Bible that was your parents or whatever that your parents give me when I was 11. Well, the funny thing is, not funny, is it was meant to be. When I got home, we opened it up, and it ain't been open in years. It had, she knew all the old elders from 25 years ago in this, whatever it was in this Bible. It was, when you go into church, it'd be they hand out the sermon and all that stuff on the paper and all that stuff, what's going on and stuff through the week and stuff. Well, she goes, wow, I know everybody in this from 25 years ago. I met all the elders, all the people. She knew this and that. And it was meant to be.
Wow.
It was really cool.
I mean, that's a couple of things come up there for me. One is the whole, like, when you read a book, pass it along. When you read a book and you go through it or write a message in it and pass it to somebody else. When you have a book from a long time ago and you reopen it and you get to see something like things that you highlighted that were important to you in that moment, and then you read it and like kind of give that kind of like wonder, because we truly are. I think comes up for me the most is, I think I've said this before, like the find your own way books where you can read it over and over and go a different direction. I think the Bible is very similar in the way that, depending on when you're reading it in the season of your life, it can read very differently. The stories can mean completely opposite to you. And that's why I think it's a very personal thing, because I think really any human's story can read very differently for who's reading it, the context they're reading it in, the season of life they're in. I think that's the unique things with stories. We tend to embellish and add, and sometimes we fabricate a little bit for the sake of the story, or humor, or little things. And it's not stretching the truth or lying in the intention, but sometimes it's like we're adding to what we think is a great story in our head. And we want everybody else to feel that energy too. Because, you ever have somebody tell a story and everybody sits there like, okay, was that it? You don't ever want that, because you're like, you had to be there. And that's what everybody says, right? Because sometimes truthfully, you have to be there. And that's why we embellish and we tell a story with a little more fire. We stand up and we narrate the thing, because sometimes truly you have to be there. And I just believe in this, in the sense of the Bible, because it is a story of witness and people and situations, it's like you can read it when you're young and then read it when you're old and you wouldn't recognize it. The same stories, like when I sat through church and I listened to scripture, and it didn't mean anything to me. It didn't have any weight to it. It didn't really pull anything out of me. I saw it as something I needed to know. And to me, for me personally, it wasn't because I was part of Catholic Church or anything like that. It was more because the person delivering it wasn't relating it to me how I needed to hear it. Right? And that's the key thing about reading a story or listening to somebody else's reaction. Or I think this doesn't translate well in texts when you're speaking to somebody you care about, something that's important. Because you're going to read it how you are in a moment. And it might have nothing to do with the person you're texting. You might get that text in when you're already having this kind of day. And then you turn over here, it's nothing to do with anything. And you read it and you're like, how dare they? It's like, no, how dare you? Over here. Could have come in with such different intent. So I think I think that's the power of part of the Bible too. Is like I've heard the same scripture over and over and over my lifetime, and it's always meant something different to me, even till this day. Like I'll hear one commonly known. Go ahead.
To your point, let's just take a look at extremism and extremists. There's people out there since the beginning of time that are killing in the name of God and for, whoever their God is. But, and so the way that they're interpreting it is to use it to their best advantage. And most of those people, honestly, believe it as much as we believe we all love each other right now. They are not trying to skew it to use it for their advantage. They really think, they should be either killing or murdering or judging or hanging or punishing in the name of God is what God would want. And so interpretation, experience, and perspective a very long way. And I think too, when you're very, alone or sad or lonely or in an addiction phase or in a healing phase or going through a heartbreak or your husband's leaving you, or all the different moments that you would go seeking a Bible alone, in a hotel room, in prison, all these places where that might be the only book you can get your hands on, you're looking for something specific. And so you're going to find what you're looking for in that. And it may or may not be out of context, or it may be exactly as God planned it. So that because most people don't read the Bible like a linear thing, like from beginning till end, other than when you're training to learn it, right? When you're a kid, like, okay, let's start with Adam and Eve and go through it. But that's really the last time anyone ever does that. No one goes, let's start at Exodus or Genesis and go right on through. No, you pick it up and you're looking for something that your soul is searching for in the moment. So it's very contextual.
Yeah.
Hey, Amber, that's what's going to be cool about when my aunt took my Bible home. I give it to her and she goes, well, someday this will be yours again when I pass away. I just don't talk that way. But anyway, that's what's going to be cool, because I highlighted a whole bunch of stuff when I was like 15 in it. And I'm kind of curious, what I even highlighted now, because it's been on the shelf and I never opened it. I haven't looked at that in years.
Yeah,
so you'll be able to see everything that I did.
Yeah, it'd be cool to see the interpretation of yourself over a period of time, a timeline, to understand who you are and who you're involved into, good or bad. I think it's can't tell sometimes if it's again just what we know or a little laziness or what it is, but there's certain scriptures that always are attached to certain things, like no matter what, weddings. Like you could almost, there's a funny line in Wedding Crashers, them betting on what's going to come up next at a wedding, because, and that part to me is just like, you could almost guess it because there's only a couple they use, right? And there's all these stories in this book. And we've just grabbed a couple of the flash and the panners that are just like the famous, we call them the famous ones. If you type that in Google, you'll pull up, they literally will pull up in that way. You could type famous scripture and it would turn up and you'd read all the ones that you hear at these things, right? Yeah. So I don't know what that is. like it just came up for me because there's so much more depth to that thing, you know? There's so much more depth and there's so much more meaning because it can be like Jason said. I wonder what he was thinking when he highlighted those things when he was 15. You know, it could be a number of things. It could have literally, I want to make sure the person that I show this to knows that I'm in the right spot, or maybe in my head that means the most to me, or maybe that's what I feel like is going to fix me. But it's so unique for me to think about, you know, writing, watching ourselves over timeline and reading the same thing over, a really solid passage, a line, something that's changed your life in a moment, and then going back and reading it again. And does it hit you that hard? Is it forever changing? Is it a constant mantra in your life? Because there are some things that never leave, no matter what your growth or not. It was here, it changed me, and I constantly have it in my life because I know what it's done for me. And there's stuff that you've heard that moved you in a way that you needed. And then, you know, maybe in 20 years, you read it, it's like, oh, you know, I remember that one. It was at that wedding I went to.
Well, like depending on where you are in your faith too. I know with mom, like what's coming up a lot for me during this conversation is having moms. Your mom had, you know, several Bibles, I guess, growing up, but she had different time chapters of her faith at different times in her life, even though she was always devout. And you know, during those times when she was like spending time with Wendy and stuff, and she was doing more prayer study for people who have really done Bible study regularly for any amount of years, there's usually not just the highlighted passages, but an entire notebook or 7 dedicated to trying to break up what exactly was being said in those passages and what exactly that meant, whether by God or, you know, for us in any given moment when we were seeking. So, you know, that plays a role in it too.
Let's shift a little bit to, you know, what it takes to protect a story too.
Well, why was Mary how did they keep Mary being a virgin the same story for centuries? I mean, really? Nobody knows. Did she have sex with Joseph? I mean, or was she a whore? Like, I mean, like that's a serious story to keep. No one has put that on Discovery Channel and been like, okay, who did Mary actually have sex with? I mean, as far as like epic stories, keeping it safe. I don't know if that's where you were going, but I mean,
No,
holy.
I wasn't. But
Sorry.
no, sorry. I was going more towards the totality of the book, a story that is protected by the people that trust the story is what it says it is, right? So there's 2 versions that I think. One, when you deliver what I said before, when you deliver a story, when you know people, everybody knows people that can like tell a funny story, or it can tell the same story you've heard a million times over, but it's still awesome every time they tell it because of the way to deliver it, the way they put it on. It becomes part of the show. It comes alive again. You feel like you're back in the moment. You have such a connection to it. Maybe you were a part of it. I think, what does it take to protect that story in legacy terms? Meaning, as dumb as a very important time, we all grew up together, we tell a story, but we all know it. Every time we get together, we talk about it. It does something to us. That's a small example. I'm not talking about the Bible, but it's truth, because how does that last forever and still have merit to it, strength to it, emotion to it? It means something to many people, from when you're 15 to when you're 45, sitting around the living room, you see your friends again, you start talking and telling the story, it comes alive again. And I think about that, and the protection amongst the people that know it have never warped it or changed it. You know, could you imagine if I told a really good story about something we were all privy to? We had a great time, and you liked the way I told it, but you're like, you know what? I don't really like Mike much anymore. You know, I'm not really down with where he's going in his path right now. I don't know. He's a little off to me, man. The next time that story comes up, I'm gonna throw a left turn in it, make it my own. And I truthfully think that happens all the time. I think this happens when we have ego in the game of a friendship or a lost relationship or a fight, an argument, a boss. You know, it goes from one day of us being like this and telling the story together, and you're laughing and I'm laughing, we're having a great time. Go home and like you can't stop laughing. You text each other little things. It's like funny, funny, funny until something. You lost your job and that person quit with you, so you hate them and you're upset with them. You know, a relationship that probably was your fault, but you blamed it on them and you just never got off that. Or all these small little transactions we have that we part ways from people that are truthfully nothing. We're all guilty of changing the narrative of how that went down. And then we start to go, sometimes I've been guilty of this, I'll go back further than when it actually happened. And I'll start to change some of that stuff. Like, yo, no, no, that's not how that went down. When they start telling the story, because I don't want them to get credit for that thing. You understand? So it's like, it's part of us being irresponsible and changing the truth. So it helps us. We start to change the actual narrative so it benefits us. I didn't get fired from that job. My boss was the worst in the world. He sucks at doing his job. I can tell you so many things bad about him. I mean, how many times have you heard that? That happens on a daily basis with people. They love their job and then they might have showed up 3 times late because they slept in and the boss did probably the thing and maybe didn't fire him right, but they fire him. And now it's like, oh, oh, Wendy, she's the worst. Can't work for her. She's the worst, you know, doesn't know what she's doing. And it becomes this, are we protecting the truth? That's what I'm trying to get at, like what it must be like to have a book last so long. Knowing, I think me personally, knowing that when some of it was written, there was some embellishment, there was some bring it to life moments to it. I don't think everything was probably as it was written. But man, most of it, like just protected for that long is a big deal. I think it's a big deal. And there's a lot of books like that, I think, that just lasted a long time that, you know, they're not contended as Amber went and started there, but I think it takes a lot, like because how many times I'm speaking to myself in this message, how many times have I defied God, like been like, no, you're not part of me, you're not with me, you're not for me, you've done nothing with me, with my life, you've done nothing for me. There's no possible way you can be in my life to witness what I've witnessed and lost what I've lost. There's no way that, no. Now, how many times have I done that personally? But I didn't even think to like change the narrative of the story that still existed. Only with him. And to me, that makes me think a lot because I've done it with people, for sure. I've done it with people a lot. Yeah, I don't know. That's a big one. For me.
When we keep stories alive, whether it's the Bible or whether it's something from our past, whatever, there's something that humanity is invested in that is the goodness within us, that is the hope and the full potentiality of what we could become if we took the best of it. So we preserve it because those might have been our most innocent moments or our highest moments or the times that we loved the most or laughed the most or felt the most safe or the most loved by God or the most like God. So those are the things we try to preserve, right?
Yeah. I think that's I was probably getting at. The unconscious connection you have with your creator will never go away. Like it's whether you're in a bad spot with your relationship with God or faith, or in a great one, I think in here, because you are created by that, right? It doesn't matter. Like what I was feeling was that I just didn't know what that was. Like, why am I not changing the story? Why am I not out there talking crap? You know, why am I not? I was just like, no, this person's not part of me. I'm me. I'm doing my thing. Like, this is me. Like, yeah, don't worry about it. But I wasn't out there in the soapbox fighting people. I wasn't trying to change the narrative of the Bible. I wasn't raising my hand at a wedding, but that's not true. Corinthians is not true. You know what I mean? I wasn't like, but if it was somebody that offended me in my personal space in my life, and you asked me about it, I would tell you my side, which means that it makes me look good.
Well,
Or
but God,
no.
as the only way that we think that God betrays us is before we understand that we're fully responsible for everything we do. So just like when we're kids and we blame our parents, you know, when we're mad at God at different parts in our life, we're like, you've forsaken me, and we feel alone, or, you know, like he's turned his back on us. Now the cat's acting up. I don't know what's going on in my
I was
hand.
gonna say, what is that sound? Is your dog playing the flute?
That is a cat that must see Jason's cat, and
Like,
I don't
I thought the dog
but-
swallowed the flute.
But that's then, you know, when we do that with friends, or you see it all the time in broken marriages, unfortunately, you see two people so in love, every story they have is a good one until they're in a divorce, and then it's like they're the devil, you know, the complete narrative changes.
Everybody
Everything
hates everybody.
loved about him for 30 years, it was full of shit. I was just, you know, making it up. But because God's not a real person, that we ultimately know that we're responsible, you know, but it's the same, exactly what you're talking about. You can change the narrative about a person easily and just be like, well, you know, I don't know what her problem was. I've been good, but
I'll say this real quick now, Portia, you can go. I wonder if in the moments of all the small moments, we chose the godlike narrative and said, no, that person's crappy, that boss is terrible. What I was just seeking, if in those smaller moments, and this can never happen, you can't see it, but if God came present in that moment, was like, they're good. They're good by me. That we'd be like, oh, okay. Because I think maybe we would, because of, there was a lot of times where these stories, Jesus was walking the earth amongst these people, and they got to witness things. And like the picture you just sent, Amber, they wanted to call him over to say, yes, she's bad, so then we can gang up. But he didn't do that, and then they changed their thought. I think sometimes we need that. I think we probably need to listen more in the stories of that, and listen to his conversation with you in a moment of what I'm doing. And listen, like, look, if I called him down and you said, I'll come down there real quick, let me take a break from the 8 billion people, stop in, take care of this petty crap for you. And I came into that window and was like, oh no, she's all good. She's not a bad person. I was like, oh, darn it. I was really getting on my soapbox, start talking crap. I think like that. So Portia, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, I think you had said, you know, we have to protect the stories. And so like, you know, how we had talked about, like, yeah, two people can go to the story and they both have a different story, right? And then they go and that story gets talked about so many different times. And I think that if you know, like, you never have anything you have to defend. Like, you don't have to go and try and justify, like, if somebody is talking about that story and they're giving their own version of how they say that you showed up. If you know how you showed up, then you know, like, it doesn't matter, because even like a smart person would know that if someone is telling them a story about someone else, then that person is probably doing that to every single person, right? So like, that's the problem right there. So like, you know, if they're telling you something about someone else, that's the red flag, right? And so like, I think like when we think about that, it's like, even if we are in those types of relationships, we never have to seek closure, if that makes sense. Like, we don't have to, because I think that even if we were to seek the closure, it would be a lie anyway from someone who didn't have your best interests in mind. You know what I mean?
But just to be super real, like with this, Portia, because unfortunately for me personally, I know why Mike can speak on it too, is like, I am I am a discerning person. I love everybody until I have a reason not to. However, the people that I've loved the most, whether that be friends, family, or partners in life, I really give everything that I have. And I get, the deeper conversations we've had about optimizing and why we do anything good for anyone
Right.
and for ourselves and whatnot. However, man, some of the people that, like Mike was saying, like in moments where, I have had friendships and relationships and things that were everything to me that went on for decades, that you cannot erase the truth. And that maybe, and until I was older, I could not accept that abandonment wasn't a thing, that people didn't leave you, that people didn't, like, I couldn't, I still to this day struggle, even at 47 years old, with the concept of we've been like family all this time in a way like I've not been with the other 8 billion people on earth.
Right.
And all of a sudden you're unavailable to me, or we're not speaking, or there's no conversation to be had about even what changed or what happened. And even though it could be have nothing to do with me at all, or us, or anything, because now I am old enough to have the wisdom to know that we go through seasons and all the things, and that none of it is personal. However, I will tell you that even at my best self at this place in my life, that is one of my harder obstacles in life. No matter what you say about how easy it is conceptually to understand it, to feel the departure of someone who was an ally is still, to me, one of the more mind-boggling things. And again, I know all the stuff to say to myself and the conceptual knowledge, like what you're saying, but whew, it does not change desire to want to somehow go, really? Like, let's at least have the conversation, because I want to see where the narrative did go astray, or whatever it is. But you're right in what you're
Both
saying.
of what you're saying is 100% right, because it's where we are and where we're trying to get to.
Yeah.
Like Portion, you're both saying very 100% right things, because it's where we find ourselves sometimes, unknowingly or wantingly, and where we're really trying to be, like with these conversations, what Portia's saying is, we do want to be in that light where it's like, just recognize that that's not happening, because we don't have to own that.
Right.
I try that crap every day, because it's a constant thing when you're knowing more of it, like we talked about. The more you know, you're more constantly being aware.
Yeah.
And then to Amber's point, same thing. It's like, I think in our lulls, we can find ourselves probably quicker go, oh, duh. But we still find ourselves in the why was the narrative told that way? I think in the seeking part of us all, why we come to this or come to these things, I want to know all the details, because I want to know what I did wrong, or how we can be awesomer, or if, because living in a space and not knowing sometimes is really tough too, because even if it wasn't a bad thing that you're separated.
Or was it like all an illusion? Like, am I delusional, or like was I projecting the entire thing, that I believed that something good was here, or and we do that with God too. Obviously, we sometimes think He has forsaken us in our deepest moments on our knees. But yeah, that one, I get 100% both sides of it. Everything you say,
I think that's not to say, like, if you do have somebody that walks out or something goes, some people go their separate ways and whatnot. It's not to say that you don't have to have your own closure inside of you, right? Like, maybe you'll never get it in that party, or you'll never be able to discuss it, or their narrative will continue to go on and they'll talk something different because, that's an unhealed version of them, or, maybe that was why the whole relationship failed in the first place, right? Because you were both on a different, wavelength in that way. But I think, it's still not to say like you'll have to have your own like processing of the emotional aspect of that, because every time that does happen, it is hard, no matter what,
but I want to believe in the faith of God and my relationship with God the same way I do with the relationships that I allow to enter my heart and be a part of me. So the part that's the disappointing is when and again, I am only speaking for myself. This is a real hot spot for me for
Yeah.
whatever reason, because I literally can't listen. One of my girlfriends with that thing with, the opposite of love is indifference. Like if I don't feel anything about it, then it's full acceptance of whatever it is, and that's okay. And I can wait for it to, plant a new seed or never ever come return. But the bigger part of me that truly believes that my ability to love and my capacity for love is like God's, is the part that the inner child in me, the heartbroken part, could never ever imagine that God would truly turn his back on me. So when a human does that I really truly love or something, whether that's your father, whether that's your best friend, whether that's whatever, a lover, whatever, that to me is always crushing for some reason, because again, it's almost like, well, God, could God do that? Like because that's what it is, right? God's not, but the devil's seeping in, but also it's like the part of me that God isn't loving in some way. Cause if I'm everything that my mom taught me God was, like God made dirt and dirt don't hurt or whatever
Right.
it is, all those things, then how could someone that I love not love me? And I get protection is protection and all. Listen, I know every cliche and everything conceptually. Again, it just the feeling that rises in me. And what I try to boil it down to is that same feeling of like, what if God or your parent or the most loving thing took it from you? And so I can never fully rationalize it. Even though I know it's healthy to be like one thing has nothing to do with the other, but how can it not if love is about God? None of that love was real, or I don't know. It's weird.
Well, I think like when people do leave, we do make it mean something about us too. Like maybe we did something wrong, but a lot of times it's not the case.
Of
Sometimes,
course.
and we just have to, yeah.
Chad says all the time that you need to find, and what came up for me with you, Amber, because I'm very similar to you this way, is I find myself around what I think are more hurt people because it's a challenge for me sometimes, to try to see if I can help in any way. And I'm not saying help them like I'm better. I mean, help in any way.
Yeah.
A new challenge for me has been being more a part of the church. I've had a real challenge in my everyday life, in my work life, my everyday life, to pick and choose who I'm trying to bring with me, and not like on my journey, but like, do I invite this person to church? Do I invite them to connect group? Do I push on them to come? And what I'm trying to say to answer to
Right. Look at
my
the
thought,
people who are not here in our lives of the thousands.
yeah, but so I guess what I'm
Everybody.
saying is like, even parent, what we think is the most loved, or the people closest to us, if we just spread it out to people in general, and I think about my friends and relationships and people that are important in my life, who am I even comfortable with bringing to this part of it? Who have I asked over and over to come to this part that will not show up because they don't want to see his version of me? Who should I just not waste my time, because it's not my journey, it's not their time with God. Like he always says, it's his timing, right? So I think of these things, and what came up for me when you were speaking is even our parents, even people that are older than us, have been around longer. They're 40 and we're 10. It's like, how could you not love? Because it's so easy to put 2 + 2 = 4 on the paper. But if 2, it has a relationship with God, deeply believing, and the other 2 does not, it does not equal 4. And sometimes our parents are the ones that don't have the relationship.
Right.
Sometimes the one that we expect the most to see, look, if God is love and love is God, why can't you talk to me about what's happening here? Like, I want to get to the, and to your point, it's like, I think at these timelines, the time runs in lines like this. And sometimes we're on this one and everybody else on this one, or that person you're talking to is on this one, or whatever. It doesn't have to be above and below prioritized,
Right.
but it's just a different line. You're speeding this far back. They're here and they're one down. They haven't leveled up and they can't catch up to you. And we're like, but you were I picked you up right here and drove you halfway down your line and dropped you up, but you're still on your line going faster. And you're like, well, I was with you for a minute. Where are you? What are you doing?
Yeah.
Why don't you want to be with me? Why don't you want to be on this level?
Yeah.
And I think about that all the time because this has got me thinking about this. Leaning more into leadership with the church and doing more of this and doing more there is I find myself separating my life a lot. And I'm trying to move them closer together because what Chad told me a long time ago was if you keep seeing the same things are happening, if you feel let down, because we talked about how I was with people. So if you feel let down, you see these things happening often, it keeps happening. You got to look around and see who's on your level. Like, are you surrounding yourself with the people? Or are you surrounding yourself with the struggle and trying to make them become your people? And I think a lot of the times, I know for me, for sure, I know I've seen it with you and you might relate even still, but that's where we've kind of been. The whole thing, like going mom to serve people every Christmas and Thanksgiving. I've always thought of that. Like, that's a
Outside
good
of
thing to do.
Dad's door being
I know, but
ignored.
it's a good thing to do, right? But
Yeah.
can we go to the basis of it? That meant that you and I never had a Thanksgiving or Christmas like our friends were having, or what we thought the family was. Yeah, we were doing good things, and I crisscrossed that path my whole life, but I was like, what is what? I don't know. You know what I'm saying? So I just think
Yeah.
people are on different journeys at different times. Mom was on that, and dad couldn't be miles away. You know what I mean? They couldn't be on different levels and lines. And I think when we search out, to both your points, we're searching out any of that. One, to Portia's point, we gotta be comfortable in our own skin to reconcile whatever it is in here on our own terms, because that's what we're talking about, right? Getting better at growth and being better at what we do. But also too, we can't be blind to the fact that it's still happening. The feeling's still coming to you. You still get shot down and rejected and hurt. You still get embarrassed. You still get all these things from people that are really close to you that you thought, wow,
Yeah.
what are you talking about? Are you serious?
Yeah, because you feel betrayed. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a real feeling. You have to
Real
feel
thing.
that. Yeah, you feel betrayed.
So it's like, how do we take that and say, I'm accepting of it. And I'm gonna get back to the book, because it's like, again, it's not like we wrote this book as the New York Times bestseller because it's just full of enlightenment and great stories. There's a lot of crap in there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of crap that people went through, like some serious crap. You're like, what? Like when you read it, you go, what? They did what? Like other people did that to them?
Yeah.
Like that group of people that Amber sent that thing, like they were ready on the word of him showing up. They're waiting, like antsy with rocks in their fists, like waiting to bludgeon this woman on no less than what they've probably all done with a rock in their hand and just waiting for the word.
Right.
Because our acceptance from who we think is cooler than us is so much greater than our actual look at this life and like common sense. We like leave it all behind for like, can I? And then you're throwing a rock and you're like, and what? Times change. I think about this a lot because I studied a ton of World War II stuff with Hitler and Nazism and all that stuff. And I went to Germany, went to concentration camps. And I thought to myself, man, not only was that a crazy time, but I thought like fast forward to all the people that were doing the things that are still alive today,
Right.
that are sitting in their chair dealing with the new world that's in front of them. Some of them never gave it up. That they still believe that was, but some of them, shame showers over them. And they can't figure out how. I read the narrative that day. And I thought it was the truth. That was their Bible. That was their thing. What he was saying was the truth. We have to get people in the human race. We have to save the human race. We have to get rid of the rest to make sure we save. And then they wake up and they're 64 and they're being prosecuted and they're like, who am I? Like, you know?
Right.
Hey, Michael, I got something too. Like I've seen this now. You guys are my age. And now we're getting older and we're watching the older people and stuff. Even us can do it. But I'm seeing this where somebody will be rock solid all their life, hardworking, and look forward to camp and look forward to this. and look forward to that. And then life changes, and for anybody or anything, but life changes and they have nothing to look forward to, and they're lonely and they're depressed and they have nothing to look forward to, and all they do is sit down. And I know what I'm getting at. I guess I can't say it, but I guess, long story short, they're hard working all their life, and they have a life ahead of them to look forward to, and then they get to the point they have nothing to look forward to. And we just need to think of that, and when we're talking around them people and stuff, and because it hits home to some people.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what came up for me when you said it, we were talking about it, was that, one, I think we have to have a better relationship with our purpose, which can mean those stories, can mean our relationship with God, the people that we connect with. I think we have to have a better connection with our purpose. I'm young still. And when I left what I thought was my career, my baby and everything, I thought I had lost my purpose. Why I left, because I didn't know what it was at the time. My mother died, and I didn't realize that I wasn't even doing it for the things I was narrating in my head. So, yeah, I think you have to be in touch with your purpose so that you don't get to that point where, like, I'm ready for retirement, and you get there and you're lonely or depressed, or you look around, you're like, where's my friends? Were just all my friends related to work, or do I have a life? So
That's
yeah,
what I was getting at.
yeah, I totally get what you're saying. I think it's our job to keep telling this
Life
narrative.
changes, and we need to remember that when we're around people, and
And we still have,
they maybe had the same goal as we did right then, and then someday we might be there. And I guess anyway, you know what I was saying.
Yeah. No, it's great. I mean,
we still
that's-
need to change, we still need to tell stories, and we need to create stories. One of the things that I always loved when I learned about like other cultures and other places in the world, and like especially like Indian tribes and places with tribes and things, was that most of everything, they weren't writing books and things. For most of our history as humans, the story was passed down by the elders, and then passed down and passed down and passed down. People were it was a game of telephone. I mean, you were just telling the stories every night, and that was the form of entertainment, and that was the form of history, and that was the form of teaching and things. And we have to keep telling stories, and we have to keep creating stories to tell. And, if writing them or whatever is part of that, that's good too. But the stories are important, and no matter what we have felt about them, we should keep sharing them, because then we all feel less alone, or more, just human, because we're all going through all the same things differently, I guess.
it'd be a cool thing. I think you've already done it, Amber. So like, I think it's twofold, but it'd be cool for everybody to try to write down their own story, not the whole, like beginning to end. Like, I was born on Monday at 2:00, but like start writing some of the better stories of your life, in journaling it from when you begin to know. And then I think step 2, which is more probably relevant for you now, would be take the book and start to divide it on the lessons they are. Like, this was the positive lesson on this side, or 2 columns, right? And then be able to refer to that in 5 years. For me, it's whatever it is. 5 years is cycles for me. Every 5 years, my life is completely different. So if I wrote part of my book and then I took the book, because you write it in a direction, right? It's not good, bad. But then took and split those stories into what it taught you, meaning the positives and the negatives, and then read it again in 5 years. It's like you might switch some of those columns because of where that story in your life has brought you. Because sometimes the stories that we've told don't have effect on our lives for a long time. We tell a story over and over, and we think it's one thing. Yeah, we're telling it. We're always telling it. It's funny. It's a little bit sad. But we wake up when we're 54, and it's like, oh, that's what that fucking meant.
Yeah.
So I think we do it in these small terms all the time. I told you guys, we write these things, but like, I think this would be cool if we had a dedication of time and journaling of like, what your life, and you started splitting into what the message meant to you today, and you checked it whatever your cycle is. It'd be interesting to see if we moved what we thought was a positive story in our life to a negative one or vice versa.
I love when Gary V talked about a couple years ago, he did that great little piece on regret. He goes, and he's talking to our age group. He's talking to like 35 to 55-year-olds. And he's like, you want to effing talk about regret? He goes, go to a nursing home today and talk to an 89-year-old man. Okay, about regret. He goes, I don't want to hear 45-year-old people in the middle prime of their life with more than half of their life ahead of them that haven't even met their successes yet and their highest points yet, talking about regret when you're really in a place where you can't walk to do something.
Right.
Or that's a different type of thing, and to keep that relative, that we still.
And that's the book that is constant, right? That's why the Bible is the stories there are. It's constant because you know what? You can read it when you're 20 and be a little crap, little 20-year-old spoiled crap that thinks the world's all yours, and anything, and you're reading it. Maybe you go to church and it's this, it means this. And then when you're 30, it means something different. Maybe you're going through something. And you're 40, you've gone through a major divorce, and maybe your kids don't hate you any. Like, it's always different. It's the same though. We always talk about this, always. This is why this message this week, it was just like, yeah, it's a book of what we talk about. It truly is. That every week we meet, the Bible is a book of what we talk about every week. We talk about our stories and how we learn from them. And then that story, how it looks later. Oh, that's different. Like, it's the same. And that's what it is. So think about your favorite books. I got so many. I can't think of one that's like changed. I'm trying to think of one that's like changed my life after I read it.
Ones where you have called me from Arizona were like the tipping point.
Yeah. It's definitely changed my life in that. I guess can't separate from my career, my life, because a lot of my greatest books I've read changed how I approached my career, but essentially it changed my life. So yeah.
Yeah, weren't the things about like even that book or whatever, wasn't it that it was something that you knew inside of you?
Yeah.
And they put it into words and articulation. You're like, yes, like that quantum leap conversation, or the 100th monkey, or where it just you've never had that conversation with another human on earth, but when you hear it or read it for the first time, you just go, exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's good storytelling too, no matter what, if it's factual book reading or stats. There is a skill to delivering a message, just like Chad does or an author does, a storyteller, your friend that tells all the stories in the group. There's a craft to connecting to people and how you do things. And it is a skill. I mean, it truthfully is. But when a message is delivered and you can hear it, a really good message will connect on such a deep level because it's already knowing. I think that's powerful. What Amber's speaking of is, it's not like, oh my God. No, it's like, no, dummy. Yeah, it's already knowing. I just didn't know what the words were that described it. I didn't know the story verse. Okay. Like, it's already here. And that's why I think I told you earlier, I never fought. I defied God and told him, he doesn't do anything for me, so step aside. But I never like defied it because I knew something huge was inside me. That's what it is. So that's what Amber's speaking of there too. It's like the
entire Star Wars.
Oh yeah.
How about the entire Star Wars trilogy? Might as well be the Bible. I mean, everything they're talking about, the light against the dark, and the power in us, and Yoda, and do not try, and like, it doesn't matter how you say it if you can tell, the intrinsic story with the metaphor.
Lucas is a smart man, yeah. All right, well, two things. We're running a little long here, and the Giants are on, so I gotta go. God bless the Giants. They're playing Dallas, and it's tied 6-6 in the third. Everybody pray pray for a good ending of the game. The Giants come on top. Appreciate you all. Love you. I'll see you Monday.
Good night, everybody.
So.
Love y'all.
Hey!